You're listening to I Am a Pain Patient with Mary Ann. Hello, and welcome to another episode of I Am a Pain Patient with Mary Ann. This week, we are continuing our discussion on embracing your now. It is one of those building blocks that are going to allow us to traverse through our hardships towards health and wellness. Yesterday, we spoke about the importance of assembling a team to support and encourage you on the way. And it's so important that we're going to spend an entire episode today talking about it. Now, the first tier of support and the first tier of your team includes medical professionals. My team, when I was going through chronic neck pain and trying to be well, included a primary care physician. And let me tell you, it was very difficult for me to find the right primary care physician. You want to look for someone who can partner with you, someone who will sit beside you and look at the problem with openness to your experiences, and someone who will root for your wellness by supporting you with the tools that they have. When I was first diagnosed with whiplash 10 years ago after my accident, I didn't have a primary care physician at the time. And after I'd gone to the emergency room, they just kind of assigned me one. And this can happen. And it could be that you find a really fabulous primary care physician this way. However, in my experience with that, just being kind of put into the system, I did enjoy my connection with my primary care physician. However, she was overloaded with patients and didn't have time to follow up with me. And so when I was followed up with about my neck pain, I was handed off to another primary care physician, and this did not facilitate wellness for me. I was trying to advocate for myself and say, no, I'm still in pain. I'm doing everything that I can with my physical therapist, and I can't seem to get out of this cloud of pain that I'm in. And this primary care physician that I've been handed off to was very abrupt, very brusque, and kind of just like pushed me out the door. Okay, fine. Well, I don't know what else to tell you. You need to work harder. And sometimes that's not the answer, okay? And it's okay for you to be upset about that. So when I restarted my journey towards health and wellness, I was really intentional about finding a primary care physician who would partner with me. And having those experiences previously allowed me to look into primary care physicians intelligently. Ask yourself questions like, what's important to me? What factors am I aware of right now that play into my current health and wellness state? So like for me, I was getting chronic migraines attached to my neck pain, tension migraines that started in the back of my neck due to tension, and they would wrap up all the way around my head and just kind of settle behind my eyes. And they were so terrible that it was like almost impossible for me to even function during those. And so what symptoms are you aware of right now? And go online. Who are the people in your area offering that service? And then look at their online bio. When I was trying to find pediatricians for my children, they have videos now of the pediatrician kind of talking about what inspires them, how they operate. And that was so helpful because I could look at those and see whom I could partner with towards being a team member on my children's health and wellness team. So do your research. Once you find a primary care physician who can partner with you and advocate for you as you advocate for yourself, um, be open to their suggestions. So in my journey towards wellness, the first suggestion of my primary care physician was to find a chiropractor. And she recommended one. I called up and had some appointments. I saw this chiropractor for 2 months, maybe straight, once a week. No, twice a week. I saw him twice a week for 2 months. And he was very kind and attentive. He was an activator only chiropractor, which meant like if you've ever used like the clicker, is what the best kind of like layman's term for this activator. It's a pressurized spring, and the chiropractor will find you know, what needs to be balanced, and using the spring, kind of jolt your spine back into alignment. Um, this chiropractor used the activator on the lowest setting for me. And however, with my history of incurring this neck pain through a car accident, every time he used the activator, it jolted me. Like it scared me. And I would lay and try to stay calm. I'd breathe through it and try to relax because, you know, the more tense you get, the harder it is for these chiropractors to work with you if you're guarding. And so I did my level best to cooperate with this way of treatment. But it wasn't the right fit for me. So after two months of seeing this chiropractor for every 2 or 3 days, we sat down and had a conversation. He was like, I don't see you improving. I mean, we could get an x-ray and see what we're working with, but it just seems like what you're struggling with is not, you know, responding to this treatment. And that was really difficult for me to hear as I was trying to be well, because it really felt like someone was telling me that I was too broken to be well. And that's so hard to hear. Oh my gosh. And it's scary to hear because it feeds into what you're already thinking. I was already thinking like, I'm never going to get through this. This is too hard. This is too much. And to have a physician agree with that internal critic of mine was really difficult. So I returned back to my primary care physician. We had another meeting. We had another powwow. I walked her through that treatment plan and how it had gone. And she recommended a physical therapist at that point. And I was scared. I'll be honest, I was scared to work with someone new after that first experience. But I did my research. I found someone who could cooperate with my symptoms. I asked for the referral from my primary care physician for this specific doctor. I made all the calls. And when I was on the calls with the scheduler, I was like, I specifically need to work with this person. And I will wait as long as I need to wait to work with them. Instead of just like allowing them to get me in with whoever had the first opening. Once I started working with this physical therapist, I remember to this day my first appointment with him, because it was April 3rd, and I remember that because it's my little sister's birthday. It was Good Friday that year, which meant that I was off from work, and I, you know, had the freedom to go and be seen in the morning by this gentleman, and I cried through the whole appointment. Let me talk about why I was crying. It is so scary to put your trust in medical professionals. It is so scary to invite someone to sit alongside you and workshop the problem. It is so scary to be vulnerable with someone you've never met. And so, as I was sharing my story, and I could see the light bulbs going off in my my physical therapist's head. I could see him getting excited to work with me. I could see, and he like connected me with an informational video right away. He gave me a book to read and take home so I could understand what was going on in my body. And there were two things that kind of played into the tears at that point. So I had fear of not being seen or being taken seriously or having someone be able to work with me. I had that fear that I was too broken to be healed. And then the voice of truth was spoken to me by this medical professional that no, I could engage my symptoms. I didn't have to be a victim. I was capable of growing through this. And that relief, whew, of just knowing I had someone I could partner with and work alongside of towards health and wellness was so important. And I will forever be grateful to my physical therapist for changing my life. So the second piece here, though, is self-advocacy. Because as we're working with these medical professionals, it is vitally important that you employ self-advocacy. Medical advancements enable us to hope for the potential to bring health and healing into our lives. However, we need to accept that sometimes medical professionals make mistakes, that they are human. And it is important to not only greet yourself with compassion, but to greet your medical team with compassion as well. As an example, one of my medical professionals that were on my team was a neurologist, referred by my primary care physician. And I would see him once every 3 to 6 months, I believe. And they're busy guys. And I worked with this neurologist, but every time I was in his office, you do the intake with the nurse and she goes over what you're taking. And I was taking a specific medication I was taking it in order to desensitize my nervous system over time. And so I had incrementally increased the dosage by my primary care physician's instructions, and I was pairing it with a muscle relaxer as needed to engage the chronic symptoms, as well as a migraine medication that was working for me. And so I was seeing this neurologist for migraines to have someone follow that migraine pattern with me. And I would go through the intake and I would talk about the medications that I was on. But it seemed to me every time I sat down with this neurologist that he hadn't looked at the medications that I'd just gone through with the nurse, because I had the same conversation over and over. Like, okay, I'm hearing that you want me to take the muscle relaxer more. However, I am on a higher dose of this everyday medication than you seem to be aware of. But knowing that I wasn't, the authority here, I would listen to his recommendation, which was that I take the muscle relaxer more often. Now, flash forward. 6 months after I had started treatment with him, so I'd seen him maybe like twice, and I was starting to take the muscle relaxer a little bit more frequently. There was one morning, well, this had happened more than once, but the one morning I remember, I had gotten up, got my day started, was drinking my coffee and everything with my roommate, which I was so grateful to have someone living with me at the time, because going through this alone is just so difficult. I had finished my coffee, I was walking towards the kitchen, and I blacked out. I grabbed the mantle of our fireplace, and I just stood there. I had an empty coffee cup in my hand, which I did not drop. And I experienced what was later called a vasovagal tremor, where my body kind of shook, and I know that I was blacked out, but I could hear myself talking to my roommate saying, "Okay, I'm okay. Don't worry, like this will pass," because it had happened to me before. But it scared her so much that she was like, "Mare, we got to take you to the ER." So I went through the ER, and it was just a really terrible experience overall. And they stressed me out so much that I just like, it was a really terrible experience. Another dear friend of mine picked me up from the ER, who was a nurse and in a former life, and she like helped me drink water. She helped me get my system calmed back down and continue on my way. After that experience, I ceased treatment with my neurologist, just for my own self-advocacy, because it didn't seem like he was paying attention to the right details. And that was a decision that I had to make in intelligence. I had to intelligently advocate for myself and my own health and wellness. So as I spoke about here in the beginning of this section, it's really important to greet yourself and your medical team with compassion. I had a spiritual direction appointment after that experience, and I cried through the whole thing because it was so traumatic. And my spiritual director, God love him, told me, he was like, part of allowing the Lord to work through medical professionals is understanding that they're human and that they can make mistakes. And so you need to forgive this person, Mare. And that was really difficult. And so I was able to let go of that experience, greet myself with compassion for following medical advice, and then greet that medical professional with compassion, because I'm sure he has a very heavy caseload and I was not one of his priorities, and that's okay. And from there, I was able to intelligently disentangle myself from that medical professional. And that's where self-advocacy really comes into play. The third piece of assembling your team here is your friends and your family. Now, as I've shared as part of my story, I hid the fact that I was a chronic pain patient for 3 years. And I wasn't a patient yet because I wasn't working on it. I just was stuck in a chronic pain life. And that damaged a lot of my relationships. But it is vitally important for you to have friends and family in your corner in order for you to be well, in order for you to climb this mountain that you're facing. And so in humility, we need to begin the road to repair, whatever that looks like. And that includes being open about your struggles. At the beginning, when I was first starting to rework on chronic pain, I kept a little journal. I did it was like a blank journal. I kept a calendar that I would make every month, and I'd write down my symptoms, because every time you go to the primary care physician and a new doctor, whatever, they ask you like, okay, when was the last time you had a migraine? So I can look at my little book and say, okay, this was the last time I had a migraine, and I had 3 migraines that week. I only kept that journal for a short period of time to help me advocate for myself, because the more you hyper-focus on those symptoms, the harder it is for your body to calm down, to not be stressed out by those symptoms. And so I kept the journal as long as it was intelligent for me to do so. And I had my physical therapist actually was the one who told me, like, okay, Mary, it's time to like stop writing all this down. You know yourself well enough now, after self-edification, after reading these books, after watching these videos, that you know that you don't need to hyper-focus on these symptoms anymore. But it was a very helpful tool in helping me rebuild my relationships. For instance, with my mom. She was the best advocate for me during my recovery. I called her a couple times a week. In the afternoons when I would get home from work, when I would be at my lowest, my most fatigued state, and talk her through my day, the hardships, cry a little bit. How am I going to get through this? And she would receive those questions that I was asking into the void with love and compassion. And I'm so grateful for that. Additionally, I had a roommate all through this, and I'm so grateful that I did, because if I'd been living alone, I would have continued to just let chronic pain overtake me. But seeing my roommate live a full and beautiful life, well, as a well person, was inspiring to me, to be able to address my symptoms and start making changes towards health and wellness. And having her in my corner, rooting for me, was vitally important, someone that I could talk to every day about, this or that, or just share life with. And she remains to this day one of my best friends. So, in conclusion, assemble a team. It's important, but it's also important to do so intelligently, to do so with self-advocacy in mind, and to understand that there are normal limits to all of those relationships, but that externalizing your journey will allow you to find the sounding board that you need to overcome this challenge and to journey towards health and wellness.